Question number 20 of the PhilNITS FE afternoon portion of the exam. In this question, we have a zone, which is a group of interfaces that have similar functions or features. Zones establish the security borders of a network. A zone defines a boundary where traffic is subjected to policy restrictions when crossing into another region of a network. An inspection policy is applied to traffic moving between zones. Inter-zone policies offer considerable flexibility. Hence, different inspection policies can be applied to multiple host groups connected to the same router interface. Company Z intends to apply a zone-based policy firewall in their data center. Thus, they develop the network topology shown in Figure 1. This is the network topology. These zones have the following characteristics. The DMZ zone represents a zone where servers accessed from the internet are located. Even if a server in the DMZ zone is breached, direct access to the internal PCs of the data center is prevented. The public zone represents the entire network outside the data center, and the private zone represents the internal network. All data center PCs are located in this zone. Okay, so we got three zones: private, public, and DMZ zones. And I think that when I was answering this gave me an idea what we're doing, but I think I focused more on the other parts of the description. In particular, this part, it says that the security policy for the data center should be hosts in the blank zone cannot connect to hosts in the B zone. Okay, I think we ought to look at the answer group, so at least we'll have an idea what's happening here. Okay, so the blanks correspond to the zones, and I think that the way to think about it is which zone has the most access and which zone is the most restricted. And it turns out that the correct answer is B, which is the answer that I also chose. Although I also thought about whether other choices like F could be right. Now, turns out that if we go back to the part where we got the blanks, here it says that blank zone cannot connect to host in the B zone. So if we put in a value, like for example in this case DMZ 2A and private 2B, what we'll get is the DMZ zone cannot connect to hosts in the private zone. In the same way that the public zone, which I thought of as the whole internet, where people outside could access the computers in another zone, then in this case the public zone cannot connect to hosts in the private zone. So that also makes sense, right? Now if we go to the next sentence, it says that hosts in the blank zone can only access the DNS server on all hosts in the blank zone and HTTPS service on limited hosts in the C zone, or a C blank in this case, to retrieve software updates. So if we're going with the correct answer, it should be hosts in the DMZ zone can only access the DNS service on all hosts in the public zone. Public, we can think of it as the internet, and unlimited hosts in the public zone to retrieve software updates. If we turn it around and go with hosts in the public zone can only access the DNS service on all hosts in the DMZ zone, and HTTP service unlimited hosts in the DMZ zone to retrieve software updates. I think this part about the software updates would give us an idea that this zone that we are accessing is likely somewhere outside, likely the public zone already. Okay, so the part where we got the software updates, received software updates, I think that would narrow down the choices for A and C, whereas previously we thought that A could be DMZ zone or public zone, but in this case I think that C is likely the public zone instead of A. Okay, blank A. But we should move forward and see what else we can find. Hosts in the B zone, which we've put as the private zone, can connect to hosts in the blank zone on all TCP, UDP, and ICMP services. And when we think about A zone as a DMZ zone, then the private zone should be able to connect to the DMZ zone pretty well. However, if we change this to public zone of the internet, then I think that would cause more problems. If the private zone can connect to the internet on all TCP, UDP, and ICMP services. Remember that the DMZ is a zone that represents the zone where servers access from the internet are located. And it says here that because the public zone represents the entire network, then the DMZ zone gives us only the servers that are accessed by uh, the uh, the other zone, in this case the private zone. Okay, so this one is a smaller zone than the public zone. So we can definitely say that A would be the better option. I mean, in this case, the DMZ zone would be the better option for blank A than the public zone, because we're letting the private zone connect to the hosts on all TCP, UDP, and ICMP services. Now, if we continue on, we see that the private zone can reach the internet, the public zone, but not vice versa. I think that's also okay. And I think in this case too, we may think that C would be the DMZ zone too. It looks okay too, but again, if we check the other statements, it looks like it's not the public zone. In this case, for letter A, but the DMZ zone for letter A, and for C, it would be the public zone. Hosts in the public zone can reach HTTPS service on hosts in the DMZ zone, which is our correct answer. This policy will restrict access to other services available on each server. Okay, so the internet, the public zone, can still access or can reach, in this case, the HTTP service on host in the DMZ zone, but there is restriction in the access. So if we put together all these, we can eliminate the statements where it's ambiguous. It could be DMZ zone or public zone by checking the other statements. And in that way, we'll know that the correct answer is letter B instead of F.